welcome to the Urban Siren Podcast. I'm Diane Ferraro. I'm your host, and on this podcast, we explore the tarot. We study the cards as they relate to the zodiacal signs and seasons. We pepper the podcast with a bit of astrology and some current events, moon phases too. And I answer questions on this podcast from listeners like you. If you would like to leave me a message for me to address your tarot question on this podcast, click the link in my show notes where it says leave me a message, and I will be super excited to review that and maybe even play your question on an upcoming episode. But without further ado, welcome to the Urban Siren Podcast. Let's get going. Hello and welcome to another episode of Urban Siren Podcast. This is a little mini episode in honor of the full moon in Scorpio this Monday, April 26th, 2021. I wanted to touch in with all of you because there are some interesting planetary placements that we're currently in and that will be coming up soon. And I will likely be recording another episode in time for the sun to move into the sign of Gemini. But in betwixt all of that, I wanted to talk a little about some of the planetary placements that we're going to be feeling the next few weeks, and just touch in, and especially around this new, the supermoon, which is going to be the first supermoon of the year 2021, and it will be taking place in the sign of Scorpio, and it will be a pink supermoon. Supermoons, scientifically, the scientific, understanding of a supermoon is that it's a little bit closer to the earth and a little bit brighter. So you'll be able to see, if it's a clear sky, the full moon on April 26th, a lot brighter, and it's going to be, have that pink hue to it, and it's really cool. But it's in the sign of Scorpio, so I wanted to touch in a little bit about that. Before I do, I think I wanted to go over some of the other planetary placements and do a really quick little intro about the 5 essential dignities in astrology. So the 5 essential dignities, as I understand them, are the way planets behave, respond, quote unquote, feel when they're in certain signs. And the 5 essential dignities are domicile, which means that the planet is in its home sign. It feels at home in this sign. The exalted, and that is when you are experiencing a planet that has a heightened sense of awareness by being in a particular sign. Detriment is when a planet is not feeling all that particularly comfy in a sign, and fall is when it has a weakened sensibility. These are, I don't want to say technical, but they are sort of standard astrological terminologies that I just wanted to share because in the upcoming weeks, we're going to have 2 planets in a domicile position. It's going to be Mercury in Gemini and Jupiter in Pisces. And I mention this because traditionally this would be when the planets feel at home in their signs. And I just want to talk a little bit about how we might be experiencing that as we move into those planetary placements. And I'll share the dates and everything else. I thought we could use this episode as sort of a little testing ground, if you will, so that we can check in with each other in a few weeks' time and see if any of these observations that I'm sharing with you now here actually come to pass, or if it's am I just full of bupkis, So I thought it would be kind of fun to maybe touch in now before it gets down, and then let's see how we feel in a few weeks and circle our wagons and see if it feels like what I'm sharing here is coming through for you, right? So it'll be fun. And okay, so one thing I wanted to touch on first and foremost is sort of a larger planetary placement, and it has to do with Pluto being in Capricorn, right? So Pluto's in Capricorn from 2008 until 2024. So Pluto is one of the generational planets alongside Neptune and Uranus, and it stamps out generations. So it it's one of those, like, they call them the generational planets, and the personal planets such as Mars and Venus and Mercury. Those are sort of more, they're faster moving planets, and the generational planets move a little slower. So just keep in mind too, I just want to bring this up, that Pluto will be retrograde in Capricorn April 27th through October 6th. What could this mean? Well, Pluto is a planet of transformation. Capricorn is a sign, I should say, ruled by Saturn, that really loves rules and regulations and structure and hierarchy and that sort of sense of being in control from a like grandfather time perspective, right? It's also a sign that has to do with time and timing. So perhaps, now here's one little, I'm not going to say prediction, but here's one assessment that I'll share. Maybe while Pluto is retrograde in Capricorn, April 27th through October 6th, right? We might be doubling down on the re's, right? So when a planet moves into retrograde, it's sort of all the re's, like redo, revisit. That's especially common to hear about when, Mercury is retrograde, right? So maybe we'll be thinking about revisiting the rules that we understand them as we understand them to be, the restrictions as we understand them to be. All of that stuff that is Capricorn-y, let's see if we're going to be revisiting those. Let's just see for fun, right? For shits and giggles. The other planet placement I'd love to chat a little bit about is Mars in Cancer. And Mars actually moved into Cancer on April 23rd. And it will be there through June 11th. So this is technically the fall of the planet in a sign, meaning that it has a weaker, I suppose, a weaker effect, right, traditionally. But I'm just curious to know if that feels true for you. This is all experimental. I'm just curious. Does that feel true for you when Mars is in Cancer? Or, in other words, Mars is a sign of velocity and aggression and strong assertiveness. And Cancer being a very emotional, sensitive, receptive sign. I don't know. We'll feel through it. We have until June 11th to play. But, I feel that this could mean that there will be a lot of velocity behind our emotions and our emotional state, as Cancer is a very emotional, sensitive sign. So if we see velocity, for better or worse, behind the force of our emotions, maybe that will come to pass. Let's put that out there and see if it happens, right? Okay, moving on. We have Mercury in Gemini. That's going to start May 3rd through June 22nd. And Mercury will actually be retrograde May 29th through June 21st. Okay, so I'm kind of summarizing all of these planetary placements because I will be putting another podcast out around May 19th when the sun moves into Gemini. But so I'm going to be just putting this out here now so that we can have some time to consider and then see how it all comes to pass. Mercury in Gemini. I love the idea of Mercury in Gemini. It's a domicile placement. Mercury, the sign of, Mercury, the planet of communication, ruling Gemini, and Gemini being a sign of clear thinking, concise and clear communication when it's when it's doing great, when it's balanced. So we might see with Mercury and Gemini really great communication, beautiful flow. When it's in retrograde in Gemini, we might notice, which is going to be, for part of the time when the sun is in Gemini, we might notice, some, again, deeper hiccups in communication, especially since Mercury will be in Gemini. So Mercury retrograde in Gemini, something to look out for, right? We might be doubling down on those miscommunications. We might want to really, like, if we read it 3 times over and redo and reread and revisit, we might want to like times 3, maybe 10, who knows, maybe tenfold. So let's put that out there and see how it goes. Okay, moving on. Venus in Gemini. That planetary placement will be May 8th through June 2nd. I feel like this is going to be rather lovely. I feel like there'll be some comfort through our communication. Venus, a planet that enjoys comfort, right? It enjoys feeling at ease. It's not crazy about struggle, as opposed to Mars being a planet that has no problem with conflict. Venus, not so much. Venus would rather maybe not have all that friction. So I have a feeling with Venus and Gemini, May 8th through June 2nd, we might feel like communication is really smooth and we're really comfortable in maybe even our thoughts. Okay. And let's move a little bit on to Jupiter in Pisces. So Jupiter in Pisces, May 13th through July 28th, a bit of a longer stretch there. This is a domicile placement. According to the 5 essential dignities, Jupiter in Pisces, it's at home in Pisces, and Jupiter is expansive. It's a planet of major opportunity, sometimes luck, and so things grow and blossom under the gaze of Jupiter. And I have a feeling we're going to experience some expansive intuition during this time. Maybe big intuitive hits. We might want to learn a divination technique if we haven't yet done so during this time with Jupiter and Pisces. Our understanding, our ability to absorb might grow exponentially. We might want to polish our divination skills, which I'll throw in, my tarot class about learning the tarot fives is available on my website. And it is a class for all levels, and we are studying. It's a recorded class, and it's self-paced at this point. And we together learn and study how the fives are significant in the tarot, being a 5-year, 2021 being a 5-year, 2 + 2 + 1 = 5. So that might be a time where you want to sign up for this free class. It's free, by the way. So I just thought I'd put that little teaser out there. I didn't want to go too far into, a long episode. I figured I'll do a little short one just to see if these estimations blossom and grow and feel resonant as the weeks go by, and then we'll touch in again. I do, though, just want to talk a little bit about this full moon in Scorpio happening on the 26th of April, 2021. So the full moon is generally a time where feelings are really expanded, and Scorpio is a very deeply feeling sign. So I feel that this full moon might intensify our feelings even more than usual, even more than your typical full moon, with Scorpio alongside it, really bringing feelings up from the surface. This full moon can also bring up deep and buried wounding, I feel. So if you feel like you need a little extra support around this full moon, I would say go for it. Touch in with a professional that can support you, or a trustworthy resource who can hold space for anything that might be coming up. Scorpio is also associated and ruled by the planet Pluto, and Pluto is a planet of deep transformation, and we want to remember that transformation can be, while it can be incredibly beneficial, and usually is if we're present during these moments of transformation, it can also be really difficult. It's not necessarily a comfortable place to be going through transformation. So I just encourage you to take very good care of yourself during this full moon in Scorpio. Not to sound foreboding, you might have a joyous time. You might be like, yeah, let's get to it. Or also, Scorpio is a sign of sensuality in the sense, not so much as Taurus is from the body perspective, but Scorpio, a very sexy sign. So you might find that your sexuality is feeling on fleek during this full moon. You might feel like you want to be extra communicative and deep feeling with either yourself, if you're expressing those sexual feelings with yourself, which is totally great and fine and amazing, or with a partner or partners, however you express yourself sexually. So just go with it. And just, again, I'd love to hear how it all goes for you. We can touch in through the podcast by leaving me a message on Anchor FM. You can also connect with me by message on my podcast website, which is linked in my Instagram profile as well as in the show notes. You can always touch in there. And I'm just super curious about how everything's going with you. That's like my main priority, because in community, I feel, is when we really learn how, when we're studying things like divination and astrology, it's like it's a feedback thing, right? It's like we want the feedback as we're studying these divination and healing arts practices, because it only makes sense if it makes sense to others, in the sense that, like, if we're reading for people or looking at people's charts or sharing information about the planets, yes, if it's true for me, that's awesome. But in the context of sharing a community, I'd love to know what it feels like for you, so that we can put our collective wisdom together and chart it out. And it's more of a co-creative experience. And that said, I also just lastly, as I wrap up this little mini episode, that I am doing a giveaway to have a 45-minute free virtual tarot and astrology reading done by moi, and all the information is on the calendar tab on my website, urbansirencreative.com. And all you need to do is fill out a brief Google form. It's like takes just a few seconds, just so that I have your permission to enter you into the contest. And then I will randomly choose a winner and announce it. It's all in the form, but I believe I'm announcing it like the first week of May. And I think the contest is closing on May 3rd, and I think the announcement is May 4th. And the only caveat is that if you do win, it's very likely that I'll be recording that video recording of the tarot and astrology reading, so that I can use that video as a teaching tool in my materials. And so if you do win, you would just be agreeing to be videoed, right, through a video chat. And also some of your personal information would be shared, right, like perhaps some of your chart information and whatever comes up in the reading. And we'll take it from there. So good luck if you're entering it. Again, you can enter on urbansirencreative.com/calendar, and you'll see it right there for upcoming events, and click on that enter to win button on my website. And I'll put it here in the show notes too. So I wish you lots of luck if you're entering. And I want to thank you for your generosity and helping me practice and learn astrology, as it is something I feel really super passionate about. But I also feel like astrology is one of those things that it's so deep, so in-depth, so complex, so fascinating, that it's a lifelong journey, and I am really just beginning. So I just want to say thank you for being present with me here and letting me explore and share what comes through for me on this podcast. And super excited, as I mentioned, about your feedback on that. And then last but not least, I want to thank my dear friend who I met through Instagram, Peter Calgaro, who has created the opening music that you hear on this Urban Siren podcast. He created it especially for me, and tailored it and wrote it and composed it. And I am like unbelievably floored and honored. And his website is linked back on my Urban Siren podcast website as well. And I encourage you to check out his music. It's really powerful and beautiful. And check out his lives on Instagram. He does handpan meditations, which are captivating and deeply healing. And so you will be seeing me in the room, the virtual room, if you ever decide and can tune in live or watch the replays when you can. And what else? A few more days of National Poetry Month, April being National Poetry Month. I do have prompts on my website as well, on urbansirencreative.com. That could be fun to play with in honor of Mercury and Gemini. You can use those prompts all year long if you like, to fortify positive and beautiful and deep and heartwarming communication. And I think that's all for now. Thanks for letting me bounce in. I just did a podcast like a week ago as we entered Taurus season. Oh, and last but not least, my Siren Song Taroscopes are up for Taurus season, and they can also be found on my website at urbansirencreative.com. Those are tarot card pulls for every zodiacal sign in the zodiacal wheel for the season of Taurus to integrate with your daily practice. Use them as anchor cards throughout the month if you feel like you need some inspiration. They are there for you, as well as a free downloadable spread, tarot card spread, 3-card spread for Taurus season, to support you in the energy of this zodiacal month. Thank you so much for being here. Oh, and you know that I do answer questions on this podcast, so please feel free to leave me a message, and that will be for the chance to be played and addressed on an upcoming episode. I think that's all for now. I could go on and on, probably little bits of things that I'm doing here and there because I've got my hands in all kinds of pies. But for now, I feel like let's leave it there. And I send you lots of love, and have a wonderful Taurus season and a beautiful full moon in Scorpio. And until next time, bye for now. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Urban Siren podcast. It's always such a pleasure to share this space with you. If you enjoy the podcast, I would be so appreciative if you could leave a 5-star review, only if you love it, on your favorite podcast listening platform. Maybe that's Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever podcasts can be heard. It also goes a long way when you share this podcast up, so please feel free to share it up wide and far with everybody that you love, and they might love it too. Your support means so much, and sharing is caring, and it means so much to me. Thanks so much for being here. I'll catch you next time.